The R50, R52 and R53 Mini arrived in 2001 to finally take the baton on from the classic design after 41 years. The original was given the accolade of the second most influential car of the 20th century, only trailing the Model T, so there was a lot for the next generation to live up to. Frank Stephenson, designer of the first BMW X5 and the Ferrari F40 to name a few highlights, led the design and crafted a vehicle that remained true to the original styling cues, but with more overall space and modern engineering to be contained beneath the bodywork. The Mini received a single facelift in 2004, although a variety of trims mean there is a vast array of Minis that you can buy in this generation that look and feel unique in one way or another, and this should be remembered when shopping for your ideal example. The R53 Mini Cooper S is the only Mini to boast a mass-production supercharged engine from showroom, tempting modern classic buyers today for its eager power surge on the road. Although even the John Cooper Works model is on the fun side of fast. Rather than competing with supercars, you'll be creating smiles without constant fear of losing your license along the way. In this generation of Mini, there are three distinct variants, the One, Cooper and Cooper S. We'll be focusing on the Mini Cooper S in this guide, although some things to look out for will apply to all Minis on these years. First up in our buyer's guide are the areas to look out for across the 6-year production of the R53 model. Although Minis are known to have surface corrosion or rust appear across the body shell depending on the climate and condition of the vehicle that has been kept in, there are three areas that are most common and can appear even on well-kept examples. These areas are beneath the rear lights, at the bottom of the doors and on the boot lid. Catch these areas early and get them sorted straight away to keep down the repair cost. Interior quality improved during the R53's production years. Facelift models generally wear their miles better than early models. The ride in the R53 Mini is stiff from factory. However, if the ride is bouncing over bumps and is so hard that you're thrown around in the seat over a speed bump, then shock absorbers are likely expired and in need of replacement. Top mounts should also be checked to see if they have mushroomed, and if there is no evidence of them ever being replaced previously, then budget for replacements. If the vehicle was originally fitted with run-flat tyres, then check to see if there is any tyre repair or temporary inflation kit. Rattles are common on this generation. Unfortunately, this is something you'll have to accept when shopping around, but there are a variety of solutions, from the ever-useful duct tape to applying small sections of sound deadening to fill areas that have developed a trim gap. If you drive a Mini Cooper S and it doesn't have a single rattle, take it as a positive buying signal. Some were just screwed together better, others have had fastidious owners, but either way, you'll save yourself a job trying to eradicate a mystery sound. Some markets receive the option of an automatic gearbox. This is a better unit than the CVT fitted to the regular Cooper models, but unless you are limited to only choosing automatics, the manual is better. Power steering pumps are a known weak spot. You should note that a very light whine isn't out of the ordinary, however anything intrusive or audible from over 10 feet away should be treated with caution. Steering racks are also a known area for faults and can be an expensive job to repair due to the tight areas to work in under the bonnet. And finally, although this isn't a fault, you should be aware that replacing the clutch can be an expensive job due to the tight engine bay, and so if the clutch slips on test drive, then be aware an expensive workshop bill is on the horizon. If you've owned an R53 Mini Cooper S and know of any other common faults, then please comment below. Before we move on to the engine, we should mention just how fun the Mini Cooper S of this generation can be to drive. This isn't just derived from the whine and power build of the supercharged engine, but the response on initial turning and feedback for positioning mid-corner. For those that want to improve their driving skill, but don't have the money for a track day each weekend, the Mini gives fun, but even driven enthusiastically, they can be rewarding without higher speeds of the more powerful and larger vehicles on the road. As is true of most cars, having a light chassis and sufficient torque is one of the best recipes for enjoyment and engagement on a challenging twisty road. Now on to the engine. First, there are several power outputs to remember. Early models have 163 brake horsepower and average 33.6 miles per gallon. Later models are quoted at 168 brake horsepower and 32.5 miles per gallon. The John Cooper Works model had a quoted power output of 210 brake horsepower, and the late generation Cooper S GP models had a listed 215 brake horsepower. We should mention, however, that power figures of 170 brake horsepower for the regular Mini Cooper S, 197 and 207 brake horsepower for the John Cooper Works, and 218 brake horsepower for the GP model are also quoted online for the R53. This may be due to different markets, but as we haven't seen this mix of figures quoted across our reputable sources in research for other vehicles, we thought it best to mention them all. Early models can have supercharger problems that are almost entirely resolved in the facelift of 2004, when Teflon was used to combat reliability issues. Either way, you should be aware that at 100,000 miles a supercharger service is required, and this is not only expensive but requires a lot of work if you attempt to take on the challenge yourself due to the tight engine space. Either way, expect your car to be out of action for a few days unless you're a competent mechanic, or you can book it into a specialist workshop that is able to tackle the job in a single day. There are kits to service the supercharger without dismantling the front of the car, but if doing so yourself, it may be better to spend the extra time doing the job by the book. It will give you the chance to inspect any other issues that may arise as well. Water pumps and thermostats can begin to leak after approximately 50,000 miles. This isn't a strict rule for mileage, but is a good bit of preventative maintenance. It would be suggested to get these replaced every 50,000 miles to avoid the problems and possible overheating that can result in a bigger issue if left to get worse. Crank position sensors along with a host of gaskets are known to spring oil leaks. The crank position sensor is difficult to reach, and if tackling the job yourself, it is advisable to remove the front bumper along with the items behind it to go in through the front. The R53 should also be forgiven for the odd oil leak from a gasket or sump plug. The oldest versions of the Cooper S are now over 2 decades old, and few vehicles with performance credentials go 2 decades without an issue here or there. Fuel pumps becoming weak, causing unreliable running, is another common issue. Our advice on this one is that if there is no evidence of it ever being changed, then put it on the to-do list ASAP. Early Mini Cooper S models can suffer from coolant tank failures, and so inspecting it for any leaks is best done before purchase. And when you need to next get a coolant flush, it may be an idea to swap out any tank that looks aged for a fresh one. Owners of later models may also want to do this as preventative maintenance. The problems continue to be documented throughout the R53's life, albeit with a lower occurrence on later models. Special editions are a cornerstone of Mini, and a highlight of these is the late Checkmate model that comes as standard with a limited slip differential. However, John Cooper Works models are still far and away the most desirable with enthusiasts. Changes include air induction, supercharger pulley reduction, and exhaust and ECU modifications. If you're shopping for an R53 Mini Cooper S, we strongly suggest trying a John Cooper Works model if your budget stretches that far. On to our pick, and unsurprisingly, it's a John Cooper Works model. We would target a facelift model that has had a clutch replacement in its history. If the budget is tighter and you just want to have fun for the cheapest amount of money, then a 2004 or newer with over 100,000 miles that has had proof of a supercharger service leads our recommendations. If you want something fun but need a bit more space, then why not check out our buyer's guide here for the Mark V and Mark VI Golf GTI. As ever, we hope you've enjoyed the buyer's guide, and if we've missed any common issues, then please drop a comment below to help those searching for their perfect R53 Mini Cooper S, and best of luck on your search.